Shalom, Shavua Tov. My name is Rabbi Yossi Lipsker, and once again, thank you for joining me on another episode of A Taste of Torah. Yesterday, we read in the Torah portion about how Joseph, who worked in the house of Potiphar, who was the chief of police of Pharaoh, his wife fell in love with Joseph, and she tried to seduce him. And, of course, he resisted her attempts, and she was not happy about it, and she decided that she was going to frame him for rape, and she accused him publicly of rape, and the evidence that she brought was his jacket. She dragged his jacket off, and she said, "He tried to rape me, here's his coat." Now, if you think about it, this is a woman who, if she wanted to, she didn't need any evidence. She was a very powerful woman. Egypt was like a police state, and she didn't need evidence. Clearly, she wanted to be believed that this had happened to her. So why does the text choose an evidence that seems to be weak? A much better, more damning evidence would have been for her to have discovered a piece or article of her clothing in Joseph's possession and then say, look what I found in his possession when he was struggling. He took this. And the fact that she doesn't do that, and the fact that the text stays focused on Joseph's clothing, suggests that the Torah wants to keep us focused on the symbolism of Joseph's clothing. And this is a recurrent symbolism because if you think about it, his clothing, the coat of many colors, is what got him into trouble in the first place. And this is the second time, there's a continuing pattern of him running into trouble with regards to his clothing. And the Torah is trying to show a struggle that Joseph is going through that relates to his clothing. And perhaps one way of framing it is that symbolically, clothing is suggestive of externality, of an outer, separate, external part of the self, and a moving away from a deeper inner self identity. And his preoccupation with clothing was his way of avoiding trying to really grapple and deal with who he was essentially, truly on the inside. And this is just yet another manifestation of that same struggle. And so the Torah wants to bring this to our attention. And we see also another recurring pattern, that every time he deals with a challenge regarding clothing, he is ending up afterwards in a pit of some sort. The first time it's a pit that his brothers throw him into. The second time it's the jail, the dungeon that he's thrown into. So what's the connection there? And it's possible that symbolically what's happening over here is that the very act of focusing and paying attention to the externalities of life is Joseph's way of ignoring his deeper self, his higher self, and it's a way of submerging himself in the pit of his subconscious, in the subterranean depths of his own being, burying himself, burying his essence, and ignoring who he truly is. And his real struggle is to figure out how to pull that real essence out of the pit, out of jail, to discover and tap into his truest identity, which is Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph the Tzaddik. Joseph was one of the only leaders that was labeled as a tzaddik, as a righteous person. And so his struggle is to connect on that level. And another recurring theme is the dreams. And both times there are dreams involved. And his ultimate resolution and his coming to terms with who he truly is and embracing his deepest, truest self, his Yosef HaTzadik identity, comes only after the second dream, the second set of dreams. What was the difference between the first set of dreams and the second set of dreams? Well, if you think about it, the first set of dreams, the center of attention, the center of the focus in these dreams was the fulfillment of Joseph's desires, the fulfillment and the realization of Joseph's ambition and Joseph's greatest aspirations. A major transition happens in the second set of dreams. Suddenly, in his interpretation of dreams, he is no longer in the center of attention. He has shifted from being a dreamer of dreams where he's at the focus of attention to an interpreter of dreams where other people's needs are the focus at the center. And somehow this transition from a preoccupation with self and a self-aggrandizement to a different way of being, to a way of selflessness, is the key to his redemption, is the key to him finally coming out of that dungeon, coming out of that prison, and getting rid of his challenge of externality, taking off of those garments and putting on a whole new set of clothing that allowed his inner self to shine forth, that allowed his inner true Joseph being to shine and to come to the surface. So it's ironic, in the pursuit of identity, the act of selflessness holds the key to a deeper, fuller realization of self. And so I wish each and every one of us a successful week in pulling ourselves up out of the pits that we submerge ourselves in through engaging with the externalities of life and overlooking the essential dimension of life, pulling ourselves up from that depth. How do we do that? What is the most foolproof method for that is by figuring out what we can do for somebody else. In the mere act of trying to help somebody else out, trying to focus away from somebody else, we suddenly gain the deepest clarity about our own selves. Thank you. Shavua Tov.